Welcome to another episode of Data Gurus. I'm so excited to welcome Casper Henningsen, who is the co-founder and CEO of GetWhy. Welcome, Casper.
Thanks, Sima.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm
Yeah?
good. I'm good. Yeah, all good here.
Where are you stationed today?
I'm in Copenhagen at our headquarters, so that's good. Fall is coming, also in the
Yes.
temperature. Yeah, that's Denmark.
Awesome. That's awesome. I'm so fascinated by your story and how you got the company on the scene of market research and insights. But before we do that, I'd just love to give people, the listeners, a little bit about your background as to how you got to this point in your journey.
Yeah, so started in professional sports, did that to my mid-20s. I was in soccer.
Soccer? Yeah.
I was in soccer, signed my youth contract when I was 15, signed my
Wow.
full-time contract when I was 19 or 20, and had a very good ride as a professional athlete. Also learned tons of stuff.
I bet.
I've spoken about that in previous podcasts, but long story short, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about like how to compound a serious amount of input and be very
Yes.
in an outcome, but also the level of quality and the level of intensity you need to really be performing on the highest level and live learning. And I didn't, in the mid of 20s, I was like, you know, I could spend the next 10 years compounding further and go deeper in sports, but I could also try to take all of these learnings and apply them in a narrative that are much longer at the business side, and I decided to do that. So I stopped with 3 years left of my contract and started actually building my professional career.
Wow.
Mid-20s.
That's pretty unheard of, right? Like stopping in the middle of a contract and saying, "Hey, I'm going to pivot here and go into professional services."
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely. It's not the normal route.
Yeah.
I think like a part of me were disappointed about what I achieved, and I wanted
Yes.
to do better in another narrative.
Got it.
I also thought that I had a lot of learnings and a lot of hard-earned learnings that I could apply in a different setting, and starting to spend the best years of my life
Yeah.
compounding and starting new
Yeah.
narratives. And I've absolutely loved that with the journey I've had. My first step were as a consultant. I had 4 or 5 years as a management consultant, primarily focusing within marketing, brand, and product.
Nice.
And had a good streak there. Ended up being a senior partner in that firm, having 125 people across 7 different units. One of them were insights. And that sort of like also became my bridge into GetWhy, which now
Got it.
almost 10 years in as an entrepreneur and a builder. So that's my story in short, Sima, but
Fascinating.
been a great ride so far.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you were a management consultant, or when you were, managing these divisions, you had insights reporting to you. And what were your observations at that point as it related to the insights that were created and the value that was derived from insights?
Yeah, so I think like I'm a business oriented
Okay.
card, and I
Right.
really love like marketing. I love innovation, and was lucky to work on that for quite some time. So I saw insights as an enabler into the work streams and the outputs we needed to create
Okay.
in these applications. And look, I fell in love with insights from the first time I interacted with it. I especially fell in love with the qualitative part of research
Right.
and insights. And it wasn't that sexy to begin with. It was actually a very rational logic. My projects, the minute I got good insights injected into it, were healthy. They were profitable. They had a completely different momentum and creativity sparked within them. And typically the outcome of whatever we produced were also just much more competitive, drive outcomes in the market. So first, it was more the rational part. It seems to be floating better and more fun when insights are injected. And then later, it actually became
You saw the results.
I saw the results, and that was like, hey, it's fun, it's faster, it's more effective, and it creates better results. So in that moment, it was like, hey, I want to figure out how to embed this and how to integrate this in the most important decisions in any avenue around innovation, brand, marketing, and especially the types of insights that sparks thinking,
Yeah.
activity, decision making from a true standpoint, not the clicks, the analytics, the surface
Right.
level. They're good to have to sort of like architect decision making, but the real need of it, I just fell in love with the depth and what it did to a room when that was injected correctly.
I love that. I love to hear those kinds of stories where you see, how insights really drove innovation, creativity, but most importantly, the outcome of a business decision that you're working on, or a product decision. Okay, so now fast forward, you decided to leave management consulting, and you had insights, familiarity, and you integrated into a process. Was that the time when you decided to found your company?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
Uh, went together with my co-founder, or he was starting a couple of years before me.
Okay.
Mm, It was a 7 or 8 people boutique, and it was like, let's try to do something with the problem that I've identified companies have, which were to inject and embed quality insights into decision making.
Yeah.
Let's try to orient ourselves for a couple of years around that problem and see if we can do
Sure.
something meaningful. And now I'm here like 10 years down the road,
Yeah.
and things always take longer than what you kind of like
Always.
anticipate.
Always. Yep.
But that was sort of like the start of you can say the builder narrative, the
Mm.
entrepreneurship narrative of my career. Yeah.
And so now you're ten years in, and I've certainly have heard and seen a lot about your company at conferences. It's like a bit of a um bigger entree, if you will, to your company and to what you do. But can you give us a sense of where have you focused? What does GetWhy actually do today? After 10 years, and you've raised capital obviously as well to be able to fuel this growth.
It's been a journey of patience. It
Yes.
it's been a journey of resilience. It's been a journey of deep curiosity around
Mm.
the real problems, and which meant we didn't we were nowhere qualified to take in funding, or we were not
Yes.
getting funding the first 6 years of the company.
Right.
We're so curious about the problem, and we were
Yeah.
trying to get our hands around the root causes for it, and what we could do and what we could build to make meaningful impact on some of the foundational
Mhm.
things that I think research and insights have. And the reason why we use so much time is obviously we think the potential for insights are so big, and
Yeah.
and the narrative that it can like connect itself to are like foundational for any company's existing. So, but I would say like to just hit some narrative like patience, resilience, deep
Mm.
curiosity, and not being like rushed into a VC game or funding game.
Right.
Take our time. Let's cook. Let's be curious. Let's try
Right.
to think about the right design for a solution. And that was sort of like the first 6 years,
Mm.
where we were more kind of like a tech-enabled consultancy, where
Right.
we leveraged third-party applications, and we were kind of like the intersection and human layer on top of these third-party to really service the enterprises
Mm.
we were working with. After 6 years, we had a very, very good understanding of both what are the workflow that you
Right.
like operates within. But we
Sure.
also started, so the negotiation with all the clients where, hey, you get the insights, you get it half the price, half the time, because we
Right.
enable, um, and you also get it half the cost. The trade-off is you get the insights, we own the data. So we
Oh.
already knew back then that data and proprietary data throughout this workflow were going to be a real asset.
Right.
Um, and I would say 5 or 6 years ago, it started to be very clear that we
Oh.
could, with the right and a bit of like with the right trajectory of technology and AI and a bit of luck,
Mm.
we actually could build a system that could imitate and kind of like replicate researchers.
Okay.
Right. And that sort of like became a very interesting build to do, not necessarily to remove researchers or to add
Right.
productivity, but to connect decision making with insights. We
Yep.
needed to simply lift the capacity and the capability of research from like where it was today to a different avenue for it to be relevant in time, cost, and quality. So that was really the thinking. So, but the first 6 years were patient curiosity,
Yeah.
basically building the straw man and the architecture for what then became the last 5 years, which been a funding journey. It's been
Sure.
capitalization. It's been a big transformation for the company. Now 60 or 70% are within engineering, data science,
Wow. Yeah.
product. We are a company around 80 people today in Copenhagen, and of course are growing very rapidly right now. And so I say the last 5 years has been about building.
Mm.
Last 2 years has been around commercialization.
Got it. And I know you talk a lot about workflow and embedding yourself within the traditional workflow of a company. Can you talk a little bit about where specifically you're embedded in a workflow? Because I don't think people traditionally think like that, right? They think as a supplier or vendor, they think, here's the insights I'm delivering to you, and not really understanding what is happening internally at the organization, at an enterprise client. Could you shed a little light there?
Yeah. Um, so there's different lenses I would say
Sure.
would use to kind of like go around that. One are my curiosity and reason for start coming from innovation and marketing
Right.
was that if you look at the marketing investments today of a company and how the
Mm.
teams needs to allocate that to drive growth,
Right.
that world looks very different from just a decade ago.
Yes.
This idea of a linear, static planning
Mhm.
cycle of getting to market is completely rebuilt by a fluid, always on mode,
Yes.
which means my avenues for decision making are completely rethought.
Yep.
That's one orientation I think very highly about,
Yep.
because ultimately that's the avenue the insights needs to inject itself in.
Yep.
So
It's
that's
continuous.
it's continuously, it's chaotic, it's like
Yeah.
it's always on, it's non-linear, it's like
Mhm.
it has a certain dynamic that are completely different to the world we know. Like that's one lens. The other lens are if you then look at kind of like your GDM investments and innovation investments, like
Mhm.
I had one of my clients, like a big beauty company, telling me 2 weeks ago, like, did you know in Indonesia we got 8,000 competitors last year? And
Wow.
so the cost of creativity, the cost of innovation by the merger of technology and AI going to go to zero, and the time going to go to zero. Back in the day, supply chain and getting to market were kind of like a mode. And what you're going to see now is that the cost of creativity, the cost of innovation, the cost of launching stuff going to be very competitive, and it's going to be very
Uh-huh.
fast. So what is Insight's role in that? Because I
Yeah.
honestly think the only differentiation that now will come when it's back in the days, maybe we're supply chain or like getting it to
Right.
market, it's going to be building for real needs in a
Yeah.
speed that are incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And then combining with hardcore fact that over the last 10 years I've been in the industry, if you look at the adoption rate of an insight,
Mm.
let me get back to how I define adoption. But
Sure.
if you look at the adoption rate of insights actually being fueling an action, it goes
Yeah.
the wrong way. So
Right.
I think that's a consequence of the two first.
Mm.
The people we serve to take better decision to build marketplace differentiation works differently than what we did before.
Right.
That the pace of innovation and creation are going rapidly forward, and the ability to inject great insights into these modes are difficult. A
Yes.
consequence of this is, hey, I'm a marketeer or I'm an innovator. I have
Yeah.
enough problems to deal with. I'm not going to look at insights.
Yep.
I'm going to start building for the market.
Uh, and I'm gonna fail fast.
And I'm going to fail fast. My
Right?
execution is
Yeah.
strategy. I have no
Yeah.
planning. I will learn as we go. So the reason why I'm so obsessed with workflow, back to your question, and
Yes.
application, I don't see any other narrative being more important if we don't
Mm.
orient ourselves through modern workflows,
Right.
modern challenges of the people that builds and creates for the
Right.
marketplaces we try to win, we
Yeah.
fail miserably.
Interesting.
So that's really the lens.
Yep. Um, so talk to me about what you've automated, or I don't know if that's the right word, but the researcher part of the process, but you're still interviewing and getting access to real people in terms of doing research. And it's funny because I think so much of the industry still is talking about the opposite, right? You still have the researcher, human being, but you then have synthetic people or personas that help you fuel insights. So give me an idea of what made you what needs did you see that made you really focus on how do we automate the researcher?
Because I care about humans and I care about empathy. And that's because for the last 10 years, I've seen the power of real people meeting
Yeah.
real people and starting to build for them.
Yeah.
Um, it's also
You
by far,
said
it's
you believe that human beings still are the important part of this value chain to help customers drive innovation and growth.
it cannot be like models are not curious. Models
Yeah.
are not empathic. Models don't ask good
Understand.
questions. That's
Right.
we need to bring humans in the best
Mhm.
avenues for value creation
Right.
and let them experience the human beings they are building for. But let's
Right.
use technology to facilitate such a room rather than start, increasing productivity with 2x or making it fast.
Right.
I don't think we have a productivity or time problem. I think we have a
Mm.
connectivity problem between decision making in
Right.
innovation and marketing and business and insights being injected in that. That's
Mhm.
the problem. And I'm
Mhm.
building the idea here is to build a platform and build an avenue where the builders and insights people of this world
Mm.
can kind of like use more time on that, leveraging where humans are good
Right.
instead of artificial. Like I have a hard time seeing synthetic and all the ideas
Yeah.
with it being
Around that.
being being. I'm uh, I'm struggling to get the concept
Yeah.
to say the least. But anyhow, so what our point of view is, let's try to build the researchers that are curious
Mhm.
by nature. Let's start to build
Mhm.
the marketeers into settings where they can spend
Mm.
the majority of time being truly human with
Yeah.
human abilities, but engaging in a very human format with other customers, real living people, and in that
Right.
meeting spark empathy that fuels
Yeah.
creativity, diverse thinking, innovation, and really can make a difference in whatever you are building. Like that's really the essence of
The core.
the
Yeah.
core of what we do. In and then
And you do this in a way that is I think that the lines are blurring between qualitative and quantitative research because the technology enables you to do so much qualitatively. But your thesis is also, or I shouldn't say thesis, your solution is to be able to bring lots of human beings at scale so the customers can interact with them and understand their need states or pain points. Is that correct?
that is correct, Sima. I would say kind of like where we're heading. If you look from a cost structure perspective, it's not going to be more expensive to drive a real meaningful conversation with a real human being than it is to survey them or do any other
Yeah.
types of analysis. What that allows us, which I think is super interesting, is to look at the data sets we produce from interacting with our consumers or our customers.
Okay.
If you certain methods will give you kind of like not that deep, but very shallow, but very
Mhm.
broad answers, and others will give you kind of like a focus, but will go very deep,
Right.
but not that broad. I think what's happening now, which is super interesting, is the cost of producing a high velocity data set that are so
Mm.
rich going to be the same as running the equivalent. And it could be easily blended in the sessions between like a hybrid between qual and
Right.
quant. And I'm much more focused on what are the data set we are generating from
Mm.
interacting with real human beings, because that
Yeah.
creates the substance. When you then accumulate over time, you could do many of them, you can do few of them,
Mhm.
but that sort of like is the outset you now need to structure and code and kind of like synthesize to
Right.
spark decisions. So that is one lens to look at it, where I would be more curious on than method. And
Okay.
um, I would also say back to the decision makers and the ones taking decisions. I think we should speak way less about techniques and methods, and we should orient ourselves much more on what's really needed
Yeah.
to stimulate the decisions. And if you go to the decision room, back to where we started, and
Right.
you look at how a company builds today, you would
Yeah.
quickly realize that a large portion of what they build needs to be, we need to stimulate the creative muscle of their brains and collective conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So you also need a format that actually can spark imagination, can spark creativity, can spark creative thinking, because that's such a big thing, whether you build digital avenues or experience, creative, innovation. If you only spark rational, you're speaking, a different language than the developers or the creative or the copywriters or the designers, or like they cannot connect with this level of substance. So for that simple reason, I also think we need to bring in a completely different experience in the construction of insights, which the rich data set allows us to do. I would say that's the two lenses I would highlight here.
So let's just dial down into that a little bit. So obviously the goal is to spark creativity and not really keep. I mean, rational thinking is helpful in certain cases, but when you're really trying to be innovative, either through product development, message test, whatever it might be, you want to spark a creative mindset. And you're saying the way you structure the data set helps the marketeer or the product developer spark creativity. Can you just talk a little bit more in detail what you mean by that?
So first of all, what data are you producing? So because that's where it all starts.
Yes.
We do video, we do real conversations. We are talking today. We bring the consumer or the customer into multiple settings across the PLC. So you could have ideas, concepts, whatnot, but everything going to be captured in a rich, unstructured format in conversation. That's where it starts. And that is very important that we start here. The conversation we then facilitate with our AI moderator will be guided by objectives and purpose, but have no two conversations that are alike. And the reason for that is what I just said. You need a rich and very high velocity data set to ultimately be fueling the curiosity and where you meet the users. Then the last part are packaging and productizing an insight. We speak very little about it. It's going to this is maybe the one I'm most excited about. We bring to market now. But that is how do we storytell? How do we drive adoption? How do we engagement and how to productize that so we can service the business? So that's the packaging of insights where if that's not done right, back to the adoption, you'll have no adoption. If you do it right, you will have adoption, but you will also spark the creativity the insights were intended to do. So the packaging and storytelling, you can call it the insights experience, needs to be completely rebuilt for a modern workforce.
I call that the last mile. It is the part that's the hardest for many to do because it does require creativity and packaging that appeals to the person who's consuming the insights versus a static data set that's like, here are the results, and it just sits there. But how do you continue to package in a way that the consumer of the research is excited to see it and can consume it in a way that can drive business decision making?
I echo, consumability is everything. And if you look at our last hires, I've also publicly shared that's just no different, like Spotify. As content creators, like what Spotify did to audio, I want to do insights. What Netflix did to content on television and streaming, I want to do to insights. We haven't seen that unlock yet, and it's about to come, which is a complete rebuild of the insights experience with consumability as purpose.
So it's interesting you say that, because all those companies that you talked about changed categories as a whole, right? It shifted the entire ecosystem in terms of how we listen to music, how we stream media content. And so when you think about your mission of structurally changing the consumability of insights, what do you think happens to the rest of the industry?
I think two things will happen. Inevitably, and what will happen is you need a different lens. I think for many years we've been talking about executing an insight, and then somebody, if we're good at storytelling and distributing, like it creates, like if not bad. I think the next chapter is going to be all about building for the users or the consumers of insights. Some of the things I'm oriented about here are like, if you look at formatting as an example, text is being replaced by audio and video.
Video. Yep.
I'm kind of like, okay, every consumer and every human being are now converting their content consumptions and habits going from
Yep.
text to video. Why do insights still stay the same?
Yeah.
Every text can be an audio and be played as
Mhm.
a podcast. Every text piece can be a synthetic, Heijian,
Yeah.
Synthesia, really rich Like I'm looking at a content explosion. That's one,
Mm.
and simply driven by our human behavior. Second, why don't we reconsider the core flow and distribution of an insight?
Mm.
Why should that be a big PowerPoint with a big kapang and then on the SharePoint or like whatnot?
Yeah.
Why isn't it a 14 days campaign, snackable, short form, long?
Right.
Like, why don't we take responsibility within the insights community to be the product owners of this outcome
Yeah.
and start to think about like distribution, adoption,
Mhm.
integration?
Interesting.
I'm a big advocate from like
Yeah.
big kabang PowerPoint to a
Yes.
15 days campaign in short form, long form. But then, so that's kind of like, if you think one big chapter that I think is going to see is you're gonna challenge the community of insights people,
Mhm.
reorient their core role. Back in the days, I'm the king and queen of insights. I own it. Tomorrow,
Yeah.
I'm going to be the stewards of insights. I'm going to be the product owner of an
Yeah.
outcome. And my job is to evangelize, integrate,
Yeah.
drive adoption. I think that's one big chapter. The next big
Yeah.
chapter are when this starts to productize and become capabilities, what you're going to see is natural integrations to complete new categories. It's marketing budgets, it's innovation budget, it's R&D budgets. So what's going to happen is a very bright future if it's right. That is that we're going to unlock and create new categories where insights for the first time going to merge in.
I love the vision. It's very interesting. And it also speaks to attracting different talent into the industry, right? Because all that consumability, snackable content, video, audio requires a different set of skills, as well as on the back end, creating the structure of the data, being able to build a rich data set that's always on. And then this kind of rigor of what traditional insights people have as it relates to, is this a good methodology? Is this representative? Is it that all that kind of can become automated to a certain degree, and there's guardrails that you can put into the technology to ensure that it is representative, in terms of what the data are saying.
I think the domain expertise are the most important ingredients to scale
Yeah,
and productize. But I think we should start going from a project mindset and doing it
yeah,
project by project to start thinking about, I'm building products, I'm building
yeah,
capabilities. I will constantly iterate on them using my expertise. But the second job are all about distribution. It's all about
mhm,
engagement. It's all about driving impact from this capability and these products that we are building. So I'm very much aligned with your thinking or
mhm,
comments here, Sima, and
mhm.
that is in essence what we are building step
Yeah.
by step at GetWhy.
So I'm curious, what is the biggest challenge that you have in evangelizing this vision and creating adoption among enterprise clients?
This is not easy. What it requires is a bold, visionary, strategic
Or
focus uh,
Mhm.
mm, to begin with. Like
Yeah.
people that want to put themselves on the line and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm curious,
Mhm.
and I reimagine. I will dare to reimagine what our core role are
Yeah.
from within Insights. What is our job?"
Yeah.
And we're not going to have the perfect answer, but we're going to be leaning into that,
Mm.
and we're going to be driving it uh, with the simple idea that we want to shape the future rather than be
Mm.
reacting to it. I
Yeah.
think this is a mindset, it's a leadership, it's a cultural thing that needs to be in place for deep
Yeah.
transformation to even get started and have momentum, right? So I
Mhm.
think that's one component. I'm seeing that coming from multiple angles.
Mm.
I talk a lot with executive, both from CEOs,
Yep.
CMOs, CPOs, but also visionary insights leaders that has
Mm-hmm.
this. But without that, you don't gonna get any momentum.
Mm-hmm.
When you then have this shared idea of a transformation or a place to go, I think there's
Mm-hmm.
many components building that capability, and really starting to prove that it actually works. What I love about the most successful cases we are in have sort of like a cost neutral logic, where the first chapter will be like an efficiency chapter,
Sure.
where this is not where we're going to end, but we need capital and we need surplus
Right.
in replacing what didn't work or were too slow with something new, and we're going to
Right.
take all the savings and all the gains to refuel into the transformation.
Interesting.
So first chapter for me, and where we've been working intensely the last 2 years, has been what I would call the efficiency paradigm. What are your
Mm-hmm.
time to insights from a company perspective? What is your, the reduced cost per insight? What are you
Right.
saving? What are the avenues you can start kind of like injecting yourself in from
Mm-hmm.
what did I did previously rip and replace, and what do I do new? So what ends up here is like savings, and you can take that and reinvest into the second
Right.
chapter, which I'll get back to in a second. But just the byproduct of the first are
Yes.
actually that I'm starting to partner with my business processes.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yes. Yep.
I'm not there yet, but now, hey, I'm a partner.
Right.
I'm now we have a conversation
Right.
around how to execute. I'm no longer linear. I'm no longer the planning mode. I'm here.
Right.
Like, let's play.
Yep.
I think that is a very culturally and like self-identity very important for the community
Yes.
to facilitate. That requires leadership. But you need the funding. Second chapter is the integration and scale chapter, which is
Mm.
all about identifying the applications and use cases that drives the impact of the businesses. So if you're a big
Mm-hmm.
beverage company, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably gonna invest a lot in campaigns and brand.
Right.
Have sort of like playbooks that facilitates and generates the outcome of
Right.
these investments. So the orientation here pretty simple. Let's try to rewrite these playbooks. Let's try
Right.
to rewrite these workflows with insights being injected and being kind of like fluidly engaged in a completely different mode than it was before. So that's for me is the
Yeah.
second chapter, where a lot of the companies we work with are entering now, which is sort of like, let's identify the most impactful applications,
Mm.
use cases, and let's be very curious with the
Um,
business about bringing this capability and product in a different motion than it was
Yep.
before. When that happens, you actually start to have an integrated new workflow,
Yes. Yep.
campaigns, innovation. It could be messaging, it could be creative. Your processes is now amplified with a different
Mm-hmm.
substance, and let's now start to track on the outcomes. Is my campaigns performing better? Am I more accurate in my innovation? Whatnot. So I think that's the third chapter, which is all about like business acceleration on outcomes.
Right.
And many companies are even struggling getting into the first chapter of
Yes.
like enterprise capability build
Yes.
and in transformation, going from like efficiency to refund.
Yeah.
But these are the sections I'm seeing. But the prerequisite is where I started. If you don't have a visionary, challenge
Right.
leadership and mentality to be shaping the future instead of be reacting to it, you
Right.
get nowhere.
Well, and I think, Casper, what's coming out here to me is your management consulting experience, right? To be able to sit across the virtual table or the table to really partner with a client and say, let's talk about workflow, let's talk about efficiency, instead of talking about a project, right? Very different, two very different conversations that lead you in different places within the client space. So it's actually getting a seat at the table.
It is, and back to your point about bringing in different capabilities. What I love about what's happening now with all the capital being injected from Sequoia
Yeah.
and the others, are like
Yeah.
that's going to be invested in in A class competences.
Yes.
You can only bring it in one asset, and that's smart
Right.
people.
Yeah.
And the majority of them gonna be like very naive coming because they don't come from the industry.
Right.
You're gonna look at the problems for the first time with fresh eyes.
Yes.
I really love that part. On the part you're speaking to, our latest roster of people we're bringing in are the smartest people from Bain, McKinsey.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
because what we have, which is actually an advantage, is we have so high margins compared to agencies that we can take
Mhm.
these margins and we can kind of like invest them in the smartest
Yes.
people to drive this transformation because it's needed.
Yeah.
If insights needs to transform itself and apply itself,
Yeah.
We need that logic. We need that seat at the table, and the only way
Yep.
to do it is to start with the users and the ones that actually cares, and that's
Yeah.
really where money is. So I think you are completely right. It's starting in the reverse way, not in
Mhm.
project or method, but in how
Right.
it's an impact.
Fantastic. Casper, thank you so much for joining me today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you and seeing how the journey continues.
Great talk, Sima. Thanks.
Thank you.